Whoa. Oh, he's in. Awesome barbel. Catch stunning barbel like that. So we've managed to find ourselves a nice shaded spot. It's quite bright out there, but found a nice shaded spot down by the river. And yeah, the rivers have now been open a few weeks. We're coming up for the middle of July, and yeah, what an incredible start to the river season it's been. I made the decision to target barbel at the start of the season, as I often do, doing it on small rivers rather than the big rivers, you know. And I do think fishing on the small rivers is really quite different to fishing like, you know, the Severn and the Trent and stuff like that. Generally speaking, I'm sort of creeping around in and out of swims with a minimum amount of gear. The opening days on the river, I was just messing around for small stuff. So it wasn't until about a week into the season that I really properly had a go at the barbel. I was fishing a new stretch that I hadn't caught barbel in before, and I decided to go in with free lining meat and rolling meat, which I think is a really good tactic, particularly on a new stretch of river that you're not that familiar with. Not because it's necessarily a really good technique for catching fish, but what it does force you to sort of move around. It's a kind of a technique of free lining meat where you don't spend very long in each swim, and therefore on a new stretch of river, it's a really good way to become familiar with that stretch, every little nook and cranny in a fairly short amount of time. So I was fishing lots and lots of different swims. You know, I didn't for a minute think that I was possibly going to catch a fish, but what I did think is that I might see some fish. I made sure that I had the Polaroids on, and you know, if I didn't catch a fish, then maybe I would find some fish. If I didn't find some fish, when at least I might find some spots, some areas that I think are likely looking holding areas throughout the stretch. Right at the end of that initial first session, I did manage to find some barbel. I even presented a bait to them, and unfortunately I lost a decent fish. He's got it. Ah, he's done me. So yeah, I was a little bit gutted about that. Not ideal, but at least I had located some fish. So that method, that technique of roaming and moving around, that had served its purpose. I'd managed to find some fish. Now it's at this point that I decided to fish much more static. I didn't need to move around as much anymore, and I was now wanting to apply a bit of bait into that area and fish on the deck and see if I can pick off a few of these decent barbel. Initially as a hook bait, I was switching between the meat and drill pellets and the pellet hose to see which was working better. Like I said, there hasn't been much rain around this time. The water was very, very low, and it was very, very clear, and with the Polaroid glasses I could see everything. And what I could see quite clearly that the fish, they were coming in, and whilst they were devouring the pellets, I could see them being very, very cautious of the meat, sometimes even spooking off the meat. And in that scenario, which I have had before, I have found that matching the hatch is the way to go. Now what I mean by match the hatch is if I'm feeding 8mm pellets, then let's use 8mm pellets as a hook bait. And that absolutely worked a treat. It was like flicking a switch and the barbel started to come to the net. I'm coming out, they're coming out, they're coming out, they're coming out. Fighting like crazy. Yes, he's in. He's in. So I've had to be quite patient this morning. But look, a cracking barbel. Not quite double figures, but not far off. Saw them spooking off the meat. So match the hatch, 2 pellet O's. Always works for me when they're being a bit cagey on the meat. And yeah, a stunning barbel.
On our next trip, we got a surprise visitor in the shape of this stunning river carp. That was then followed by a modest sized barbel, probably somewhere around 7 or 8 pound. A lovely fish, but we got it back quickly because we'd seen something in the swim that was substantially bigger and we wanted to catch it.
Actually coming in. Whoa! Come on, this time. This time. Yes, he's in. Yes, he's in. So I've decided to move into the sun because I've got something a bit special. Look at that. Check him out. This is the one that I saw yesterday. Double figure barbel, £10 an ounces. Incredible. I'd only just slipped that other one back, put the bait in, and had this absolutely awesome barbel. Incredible. I've just had another epic barbel session and I just wanted to quickly share with you my thoughts on bait application. Now, it couldn't be much more straightforward, to be honest. I keep things really simple. I'm not using feeders, so I haven't got any complex sort of ingredients or mixes that I'm putting into feeders. I'm using a fairly basic running ledger rig, just fishing a bottom bait that way. And to be honest, I'm just quite happy feeding a good quality pellet by hand. For me, this works perfectly well on small rivers. Can see how it's a bit more challenging on a big river, but on small rivers, you know, I'm just hand feeding small amounts of pellets into the swim. I've been doing okay when I'm feeding the 8mm spicy sausage pellets, and I do prefer 8mm. I prefer quite a big pellet because there's less chance of those getting swept away in the flow. You know, because they're bigger, I've just got a better feel for where they're going to land on the riverbed. Having said that, there hasn't actually been that much rain recently, which means there isn't much flow, and I've been getting away with introducing 6mm pellets as well. And I think that's a good thing. If you've got a couple of different sizes of pellets out in the swim, just kind of keeps the barbel guessing in terms of what it's picking up. The only thing that I would say is obviously don't mix your 8mm and your 6mm together in a bag, because then when you're feeding them, your 8mm are landing in one place and your 6s are landing somewhere completely different. Now, whilst using pellets in this way might sound a little bit basic and simple, they were absolutely instrumental on these sessions to actually catching these barbel. Because what I was doing, without putting a rig in the water, I was throwing pellets into the canopy, so into the bushes, into the safety of their own environment. I wasn't trying to draw them out straight away, I was just trying to get them onto the bait. I knew they were on the bait when the water started to colour up. So it was at that point that I'd be able to slowly throw the pellets in, just slightly downstream, then more, slightly more downstream until I could just about see their tails poking out from underneath the canopy. Then I would keep doing this, slowly feeding further and further downstream until they were on these pellets right in front of me. Remember, 4 yards wide, 2 foot deep, crystal clear, and I got half a dozen decent barbel, including double figure barbel, feeding at my feet. And it's at this point that I knew it was time to get a rig in. Here he comes, here he comes, here he comes. And he's in. Whew. So I've been feeding the 8mm spicy sausage pellets into the swim little and often, putting a matching hook bait with the drilled pellets, and look, a stunning, stunning barbel. Made up with that. So you might have noticed that I'm using a bait screw for the pellet hose. I like to do that. By this point, I completely ditched the meat, not using that. I'm literally switching between halibut 8mm pellet hose or the krill pellet hose. The halibut ones were much more matching what I was feeding in terms of colour. So really matching the hatch, you know, really blending with what I was feeding. But what I was experimenting with was the krill pellet hose as well. And those are a different colour and therefore would stand out a little bit more. And I was wondering whether they might be able to get me some bites quicker. To be honest, I was getting fish on both. Both were working really, really well. But certainly I do find that using that bait screw, it takes a little bit more time to tie up the rig, but once it's tied, very quick to switch on and off the pellets. So by this point, since finding them and using the right methods, you know, I've probably done about 3 or 4 sessions on that spot, picked up at least half a dozen barbel, running into double figures, and the next session was no different. Here we go. This is what I'm doing. You see I've got my pouch pellets there, and I'm literally just touch ledgering. These fish are right at my feet, and I'm just feeling for a bite. Come on, come on, come on. Sounded big. Yes. Come on. It's a nice one. Look at that. That has taken minutes. Oh, easy. Whoa. Whoa. Up early at silly o'clock and out the door to catch stunning, stunning barbel like that. Look. This time the krill pellet hose. Came very, very quick, this one. Woof, might be coming to the end of my campaign after these fish now, I think. Time to leave them in peace. So that is the end of another session. As you can see, the sun's come up now and I'm getting fewer and fewer bites in this spot now. Initially on these short sessions, they're only a few hours maximum. Initially I was getting a few bites, then only 2. Today, 1 bite, 1 fish. That's telling me that it's now time to move on, I think. We've had a great run of barbel, but it's now time to leave them in peace and go and fish for something else. Not sure what that'll be, but whatever it is, I look forward to sharing it with you.